Hello, my gorgeous friends on the internet. How you are doing? Okay, so today's topic we're going to look at how to parse JSON, complex JSON data using Flutter. So in my previous video, I showed you how to parse JSON data, but it's not as complex as the one I'm going to show you here today. So today's own, and let me give you an example of how it's going to look like. Okay, so this is the JSON data that we'll be passing, and I got this JSON data from the JSON placeholder.typico.com, and then you click on users. So you can see this JSON data is a list of objects, and the object has strings. So you can see the first string, ID, name, username, email, and address. And inside the address, you also have another object of strings, which are streets, city, zip code, and geo. So inside this geo, we also have the latitude and longitude. Also, we have the phones, the website, the company, the names, cash, price, and BS. So all these we can still do it depending assuming we follow the previous tutorial which I showed you how to pass JSON data. We can still use that method to pass the JSON, but it's going to be a little bit complex and our code is going to be lengthy, and that's not what we want. So we always want to practice clean code and also nice programming so that we can test our applications. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to introduce you to a method that we can use to pass JSON data like this by creating a Dart object. So that object is going to help us to pass the JSON data and then populate it our UI. Okay, so for now, first of all, I'm going to set up my app. So right now it's just a basic application that we have once we create a new Flutter project. So I'm going to remove all these boilerplate comments. So if you're on VS Code, type Ctrl H and just with your slash, your dots, okay, and asterisk. So you make sure you click on this asterisk here. So to use regular expression, select everything, and then we are going to replace it with an empty string. So just hit enter. Okay, sorry, just replace or okay with an empty string, and it's all gone. So I'm going to format it, Control Shift I. Okay, so all those stuffs are gone. So what I'm going to do now, I'm going to remove this and also remove this, because the theme we are going to be populating is just a JSON object. And for now, I'm not going to do that. So let me just go over to the page and just copy the whole of this. So I'm going to introduce you to a website that you can use to create a JSON Dart object on the fly. So just copy this, okay, copy that to your clipboard, and you go to the website app.quicktype.io. So I already used it to create a JSON object. So this was my JSON, and you can see how complex this was. And once you create it, it's going to create a JSON object for you behind the scenes, so you don't need to worry about typing all this inside your code. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to replace all of this, remove it, and then paste my new JSON data. And you can see it has created it for us. And if you look very well from here, you can see the ID, and we have the ID, the name, the username, email, address, phone, website, and company. But I don't want this name, so I'm going to change this name to do. Okay, to do's, right? That was the name here. Okay, users, not to do. So I'm going to change it to users, and it's also going to change the root name for us, users. The reason why I'm getting this is because I've already changed the programming language to be Dart, as your own might be in Kotlin Objective-C. So if you need Kotlin, you click, it's going to generate for Kotlin for you. But since I'm using Dart for this tutorial, I'm going to select Dart, and it's going to create it for us. And you can see it also shows us a way to pass the JSON data. So this is the comment. So what I'm going to do, I'm just going to copy all of this. So Ctrl A to align, to select everything, and then copy this to my clipboard. So I'll go back to my my projects, and inside the main.dat, I'm going to create another file. So this one is just going to be the Dart object. So I'm just going to give it Dart JSON class. Okay, dot. All right. So inside here, I'm just going to paste that copied JSON data. So you can see it has been pasted, no errors, everything is okay because we selected that as the programming language. And you can see here it showed us to pass this JSON data, do final user JSON from JSON. Okay, so I'm going to show you that later on. So next, what we are going to do, I'm going to create, first of all, since it's JSON data, we'll need the package, HTTP package. So I'll go over to my prospect.yaml file and go over to my browser, and okay, you just go to pub.dev and select and search for HTTP. Go over to installing, copy this dependency and add it inside your prospect.yaml file. Okay, under Cupertino icon, I'm gonna add it, and make sure you run pub.dev. So I run this. Sorry, Flutter pub-get. Okay, to get the dependency. Okay, so I always like running this twice to be sure that everything has been downloaded successfully. You can decide to run it as many times as you want, no problem. But most people prefer to restart the project, but me, I just prefer running it more than once, okay, to be very sure. So now we don't need any other package, so I'm going to close the prospect.yaml file, and we have the .json object. Okay, so I will go over to my lib folder. So I'm going to create a controller class, no, not a folder actually. I'm going to create a .controller class where we're going to perform all our JSON response and all that. So this is going to be API, okay, API provider, okay, API controller dot dat. Okay, so inside here, first thing first, I'm going to import the HTTP package that I just added to the prospect.yaml file. So I'll say HTTP and go over to that, and we're going to import it as HTTP. Alright, so next I'm going to create a class. So this is going to be API provider class. Okay, awesome. So now what I'm going to do, since the anything that is, since it's an HTTP request we're trying to make, I'm going to wrap it inside a future function because I don't know when the data is going to return. So we are going to receive the data only when the data is available, and then we use it to populate our UI. Okay, so let me bring up my app up. Okay, so you're going to see the changes as it's reflecting, but for now, no changes. So what I'm going to do, I'll use future, and so I'll be using this class name. So if you go over here, so the return type is going to be users, and this users is a list. Yeah, is a list. So I'm going to use lists with the users class. Okay, import it, and I'll give it a name. So get users. So this is the name of the function, and it's going to be a synchronous function. So I'm going to put the async there. So what I'm going to do now is to copy the endpoint where we are fetching the JSON data from. So I'm going to copy this endpoint right here and go back to my app. So I'm going to create a variable final URL equal to, and paste that inside. Okay, so now we have our endpoint where we'll be fetching the JSON data from. So now I'm going to wrap this inside a try and catch. Okay, I can decide to wrap it inside a try and catch but since this is not a production app, I'll just use some if-else statement. So I'm going to do something like okay, let's say final response. So we're going to make request first, request, not a response. So I'll use the await keyword since it's an asynchronous function, await, and this is something that we don't know when it's going to return. So I'm going to use the await HTTP dot get and then pass in the URL. So this URL is this one here. Awesome. So now we have that. We have successfully connected to the endpoint using the HTTP package. So the next thing I'm going to do is to use the if statement. So I will say if the response dot the status code is equal to 200. That means we have a successful response. Okay. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to pass this inside this class here. So I'm going to use this thing which they created. So final users from JSON, and then pass the JSON string. But first I need to get the body. So I'll go over to my API controller and I'll create something like this: body, okay, equal to red, that is response dot body. Okay, so this is the string. Remember in the previous tutorial I showed we used something like, let's say, res, and then we did something like json dot decode function. So once you do json dot decode, and then we'll pass the body. So but in this case we don't need to do that because this class has already done everything that we need to do with the json dot decode. If you can see here, if you look over here, we already have json dot decode and then the string. So this one have already done all those stuff for us. We don't need to repeat the same process, so we just go straight to the point by using this method. So I'm just going to copy this and go over to my API controller and press this. So I'll replace this JSON string with the body, this body here, which is a type of string. So I'll replace it with body, and then what do I want to do? I'm going to return the users, okay, so we can get it from our UI. But first I'm going to print it. Okay, I'm going to print user, so we're going to see the type of response we are getting. I will shift over to my debug console, but for now it's not going to work, but because I'm not done implementing the UI. So what about we have a failure response, like we have a response of 400, 401 and all that. So we want to print let me say finder body, and then we print the rest, we get the response that body, and then I add it over to this one, or instead of that I'm just print, okay, no, I'm going to add it to users error, sorry, still using the same method. So I'll use users from JSON and then passing the body, and then I'll print. So instead of returning that, I'm just going to print the error message, okay, or you can still return the error message if you want. No problem with that, it's still not going to break your UI. Okay, now this is all that we need because we're just getting the users data from the JSON data, and you can see how simple it is. We don't need to write all those boilerplate code and all that because this class has already done everything that is being needed for us to pass this JSON. Okay, so now the next thing, I'm going to go over to my main.dat class, and okay, so we have this stuff here. I won't be needing all this, so what I'm going to do, I'll just clear everything and then create a new project. So first I need to remove this stuff. Okay, clear this home page. Okay, I'm going to pause this because I don't want it to show any error, so I'm going to pause this for now and head over here. So we have a stateless widget that returns a material app, and the material app has its own theme of black. So I've changed this black to amber, so from blue to amber, sorry. So I'm now going to create another stateful widget class. So I'm using a stateful widget because our UI is going to rebuild itself. It's going to change because it's a network request and the data is going to change with time. So I'll use a stateful widget. So the stateful widget is going to return my home page. Awesome. Okay, so instead of container, I'm going to return a scaffold so we can use an app bar. So return a scaffold and return an app bar, and I'll give this a title and a const of text. So I'm using const because I don't want a constant widget to always rebuild itself, because if it continuously rebuilds in a production app, if the widget is rebuilding itself every time, it can cause something called a jank, whereby our UI is very slow, it's not responding to users click, and that's going to create a bad users experience. So I'll change this stuff to complex. Okay, so I'm going to create a body, and the body I can decide to use a stream builder or a future builder, but for the sake of this tutorial I'm going to use a future builder. Okay, so right now I can just first let me play the video. No, let me play the app so that I continue so that you can see what I did. So I'm just going to hot restart this and to see the effects. Okay, wait for it. All right, so we have the complex JSON request and the UI is so empty right now. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to give this a theme of black if you want. So I'm just going to remove that and give it a theme. Theme data dot tag. All right, so this cool. All right, I'm going to remove it because the amber is not showing, so let's just leave it the way it is. But it's not showing my amber. Okay, so I'll return back to the previous. Okay, so we have the colors.amber. All right, so underneath this amber, I'm going to create a body. So this body widget, I'm going to return a future builder, and it's going to be a future builder, and the future builder is going to return a list of users. So this users is coming from this class we have here, this users class. So I'll go back to the main.dat and users. Awesome. And okay, so we can see the properties that the future builder requires. It has a builder, a future, initial data, and also the key. So what I'm going to do now, I'm going to return a future. So that future is actually the function that's going to return, and you can see it requires a list of users, the same thing we created in the API controller, list of users. So I'm going to call this function get users from this API provider dot get users. So that's going to be the future. So I'll go over to the main.dat and the future API provider, okay, that gets users. Awesome. So now we have our future where our JSON data is going to be coming from, and from here we can use it to populate our UI. And it's also requiring something else, which is a builder. So if you watch very well now, you can see that our data is actually coming out, instance of users, and all that. So what I'm going to do, where I'm getting this data from is from this API controller where I print the users data. Okay. All right, so what I'm going to do now is to go over to, okay, I'll go over to the main.dat and create a builder, and the builder takes in a context and a snapshot. So this snapshot is where our data are going to be coming from. So what I'm going to do now, you can see it's throwing an error because the build function returned null. So this builder, we need to return a widget. So inside this widget, first of all, I'm going to create a variable of data and then store the snapshot.data inside. Okay. Then I'm not going to do something like an if statement. So if snapshot dot has data, so if there's data inside, we are going to return our list_view.builder, but if it doesn't, then we just return a circular progress indicator. Awesome. So now inside the snapshot of data, I'm going to return a list_view.builder widget, and it has two properties that I'm going to use. One is the item count, so I'm going to specify the item count, which is going to be data.length. Awesome. And also we're going to put the item builder. So this item builder is actually the widget that we're going to display. So it takes in a context and also the index, that is a particular position where those items are provided. So here I'm going to return a basic, let's say, first for simplicity, let me just return a test so that we can actually see what we are doing. So but first I'm going to store the particular item that is users data inside a variable. So I'll set the data and index. So it's going to loop through each index and then give us what the datas are. So what I'm going to do now, I'm just going to return a test for now because I'm not done with the UI. So I'm just going to test users. Okay, so I don't know, this might be a string. So I'm just going to return users. No, not this, not users. Okay, let's see users.data dot. You can see how it is. You just like we have the address, the company, the email, the ID, the name, the phone. And you can see how simple this one is. We don't need to use this method by putting a curly braces and then passing address inside. Just with a dot, we can just access the properties inside. Like we want to access the name of the user with the phone number. So let's say assuming we want to access address. So inside the address, we have the from the address we have the street, the city, the zip code, and with that we can access it easily by users data dot address dot can access the city. So let's say we want to access the latitude and longitude inside the geo. Just click on geo dot lat long and longitude. Okay, so for now I'm just going to access the name. Okay, the name of the user. You can see the name doesn't have any more properties except you want to modify it, like you want to know the length and all that. Okay, so this one is much more simpler and easier compared to the other one, but depending on the method that best suits you, you can go with it. So now you can see we have successfully accessed the names of the users. So let me say I want to access this. Okay, so from the JSON data now, let me say I want to access the companies and also the name or the catchphrase inside the companies. I can do that easily because this has already done that for us. I'm just saying users data dot company dot the catchphrase. Awesome. So let's check that, and you can see multi-level client server neural set and all that has been printed already. I can also, that means I want to access the latitude of the user, so I can just say users dot address dot geo dot lat long, and this might show an error because this lat long is kind of okay, no error. So we have this is a string actually, so now we can see we have all the latitude and we can also get the longitude of the user's location. Oops, two dots there, and you can see it's changing real time. Awesome. So now it's time for us to modify this UI, but at least with this alone you can actually achieve what you want, but I still need to like make the UI look nice and all that. So basically I need to define the number of data I want to get. So I'm going to get the name and the email address. Yeah, okay, I can get the name and the email address. Awesome. So that's with that I'll be using a ListTile, and also I want to get a circular avatar, and that circular avatar is going to show the first name of the user. So let's say L, it will only show the first name of the user, and when we come here it's going to show E, which is the first name of the user. How do I achieve that? I'll do that in this video right here right now. So the first thing I'm going to do, instead of returning title, I'm going to return ListTile. Okay, so this ListTile is going to have a title. So here I cannot use const because you know why? Because this data is going to change with time. So if I use const to do this, it's going to show an error because see I type users data dot address and it's showing me a red line. But assuming I just type a normal string, you can see because this thing is static, it's not going to change with time. But because the reason why it's showing us that error is because I use a const variable, and const variable is not allowed in a widget that changes dynamically with time. So what I'm going to do, I'll use a test widget and then pass in the user's data dot the name of the user. Awesome. So let's see our UI. Okay, I need to close this up, and also this is not supposed to have that. Alright, let's see. Awesome. So now we have the list of users and all that. So now the next thing I'm going to do is to create a subtitle. So as I say, the subtitle is going to carry the email address of the user. Okay, so this is going to be users.email. Awesome. So we build that, we have the email address of the users. Awesome. So now we can see our UI is having some data and it's looking so cool. So the next thing I'm going to do is to add a circular avatar, which I said, and the circular avatar is going to contain the first name of the users. So first, let me just show you the circular avatar. So it's going to be a leading property, a leading property, and it contains a widget. So here I'm going to return a circle avatar. Sorry, not a cycle avatar. And this cycle avatar is going to take properties. Let me see what it's going to take. So it has a child. So the child is going to be a test widget. So for now, let me just type a random word and see what it's going to come up with. Okay, so this is a random word and it's not looking so cool, but I can still decide to put something like give it a radius. So I need to give it a radius of 50, sorry, and to make it a little bit nicer. Oops, it's too big, so reduce it to 30. Okay, so cool. So I'm going to change the background color so to something like let's say something like a blue. Awesome, but it's not, our UI is not looking cool, so I can just change it to black. Alright, so at least black can be manageable. Oops. Alright, you can still go with that. So now what do I want to do? I want the first letter to be the first. I want the letter that will be shown inside here to be the first letter here. So the reason why I'm doing that is because this JSON data does not have any place for fetching the image of the user. Assuming there's a place for fetching the image, then I would go with that. But since there is no image, so I'm just going to replace that with the first letter of the user's name. So what I'm going to do inside here, I'm going to do something like, okay, first I need to get the user's name. So let me say the name of the user. So I'll get it from the user's data dot name. Okay, so I'm going to format this. So let me say first name equal to, let's say, name dot substring. So the substring is going to be I want to get the first one, right? Right. Okay, I think there should be something else to do. Okay, sorry, I'm just doing this inside my head right now. So I'm going to use substring. So the first index is going to be, let me see 1 and see what it's going to come up with. So I'm going to print this first. So let me just print first name and see if you're getting that. Okay, so Linand, let me see. Okay, so the first digit is off, and that's not what I want. So I'm going to get the first number, so 0, 2, 1. Awesome. So let me print it out, and you can see now we are having the first letter of the user. So we are having CGNKM, and just like that, CGNKM. So now I'm going to add this first name to the child widget. So I'm going to replace this code here with the first name, that is the first letter of the alphabet. Awesome. So now we have successfully got that. So now you can see Leanne Graham, we have the L, Alvin Howell, we have the E, Clement Barge, we have the C. What about you want to get the first and the second, that is the first two characters in this name? So we are going to do, instead of 0 to 1, I'm going to do 0 to 2. Let's see what we got. Awesome. So now we have the LEERCLPACHMRKU and all that. Awesome. This is looking cool. So now I'm going to show you how to add a tab listing to that. So I'm just going to add on tab property. So once you tap on it, we just want to print. Let's just print. So let me just print the user's address. Okay, so once you click on it, you should print out the user's address. So if you click, move down a little. So click on this. So we have the instance of address. Okay, so address, we need to access the address has a city, so I want to access the city where the users is staying. So click on this, we should see South Christie, and you click on this one, you can see Mackenzie Haven. Alright, okay, we soak. Alright, that was it. And guys, you can see we have successfully passed a complex JSON data easily by creating a JSON, a that object using this website, which is instant parse JSON. That is the app.quicktype.io website to parse the JSON data, and also using this complex JSON and all that. Alright, we have successfully done everything. Thank you guys for watching, and do well to subscribe and like the video. See you in the next video.